Irony is more than prevalent in the novella Chronicle of a Death Foretold by Gabriel García Márquez. Every character in the book is tied to the fate of Santiago Nassar, from his closest friend Cristo Bedoya, who gives the narrator most of the crucial details of his companion's death, to even some of the least detailed characters in the book like the beggar woman, who comes to Clotilde Armenta's store every day asking for milk. In this video analysis of Chronicle of a Death Foretold, I will be discussing the role of all the different characters that thread themselves into the tangled mess of irony that ultimately reveals the core message: death is fated. A brief summary of the book. The Vicario twins, Pedro and Pablo Vicario, stab Santiago Nassar to save the family's honor, as he has allegedly taken the virginity of Angela Vicario, their younger sister. The townspeople fall into 5 different categories that I have assigned: scared, confused, unwilling, willing, and dismissive. I have sorted the people out for my own satisfaction and for further understanding the novella. From the beginning of the novella, not many of the numerous characters truly seemed to care for Santiago Nassar. Even the characters that were actively trying to stop the murder failed miserably, which I will discuss later in the video. The unwilling. There are multiple characters that seem to say good riddance to Santiago's murder. For instance, Polo Carrillo, the owner of the electric plant in the town, and his wife are briefly mentioned characters that believe Santiago's innocent actions before his death were not ones of innocence at all. He thought that his money made him untouchable, says Carrillo, while his wife chimes in, just like all Turks. Flora Miguel only knows about Angela's accusation of Santiago Nassar's taking her virginity. Without proof, she earnestly believes what she had heard, and when understanding that the twins want to murder him, she went through a crisis of humiliation. When Santiago walks through the door to her house, she boldly declares, "I hope they kill you." She does not have enough evidence and is leaping to conclusions, but this still puts her in the unwilling to help category. Victoria Guzman, Santiago's cook, has never liked Santiago from the beginning. Divina Flor, her daughter, mentions that her mother has not explained Santiago's fate to him because in the depths of her heart she wanted the twins to kill him. Another vital character that seems to have caused much of the commotion is Angela Vicario. She's convinced that Santiago was the one who took her virginity, even though the judge is surprised at not having found a single clue, not even the most improbable, that Santiago Nassar had been the cause of the wrong when he was murdered. All proof that the audience has that Santiago is Angela's perpetrator is her word, and even the narrator seems confused when Angela recounts that Santiago is in the wrong. That's what she swears in the brief, but with no further precision of either how or where. The aforementioned characters did not want to stop the murder, but almost encouraged it, especially in Victoria Guzman's case, as she acknowledges to Cristo Bedoya of knowing the twins' plans, but dismissing it as drunken rambling, which is why I think she can be categorized as both unwilling to help Santiago Nassar and dismissive of the twins' behavior. The dismissive. When the Vicario twins first begin to tell the townsfolk of their plans, 22 people declared that they had heard everything said, yet all of them think that they are only talking because they want an audience. After learning about Santiago's planned death, most of the townspeople do not seek out Santiago Nassar, but instead began to take up positions around the square to witness the crime. Even after the murder has occurred, each person in the town lines up to tell the investigating magistrate their accounts of events, everyone eager to show off his own important role in the drama, even when many dislike Santiago, much less care for his death. The actions of the townsfolk treating his death as some sort of performance really strikes me as cruel. I know that the town is small and not much drama happens, but is witnessing a murder something you really want to see? In fact, many of the characters convince themselves that the Vicario twins are all bark and no bite. Their reputation as good people was so well-founded that no one paid any attention to them, the narrator mentions, when the twins first revealed the planned murder at the butcher's shop after sharpening their knives. Don Rogelio de la Flor assures Clotilde Armenta that those two aren't about to kill anybody, much less someone rich. Colonel Lázaro Aponte thought the twins were merely rambling because they were drunk. Instead of doing anything more useful, he just took away their knives and sent them off to sleep. Colonel Aponte did almost nothing to stop them, but was at peace with his soul in his inaction. He even received a reminder from Cristo Bedoya to find him afterwards, but he went into the social club to check on a date for dominoes that night. There was no sense of urgency despite the fact that Santiago was going to die. One would think that a mayor would have sought out one of his townspeople with more conviction. Faustino Santos, the Vicario twins' butcher friend, thought that the twins had confused the time of day when they came to the shop to sharpen their knives, as they normally appeared on Friday afternoons. He even reminded them that it was Monday, and after they confirmed that they understood and casually mentioned their murder, he became concerned and reported their behavior to policeman Leandro Pornoy. This leads me to suggest that he becomes more willing than dismissive as time passes. The dismissive character's actions, or lack thereof, definitely contribute to the overarching theme of death being fated. After all, they did nothing, or at least the bare minimum, to save Santiago Nassar. The Scared. Indalecio Pardo, a friend of Santiago, heeds Clotilde Armenta's request to find his companion. However, he loses his nerve to tell him the details of his murder when he sees Cristo Bedoya and Santiago. Instead, gave them each a pat on the back and let them go their way. Strangely, Leandro Portnoy does nothing to stop the twins of their bloody conquest except for mention their words to the mayor, Colonel Lázaro Aponte. I'm not sure myself what the policeman thought the mayor of all people could have done to stop the Vicario twins from committing murder, when he himself should technically have more power to arrest them for at least criminal threat. The policeman can therefore be categorized into the scared category, as he was too nervous to do anything himself. The Willing. Clotilde Armenta, a shopkeeper in the town, is one of the characters more willing to help Santiago in the novella. She is strangely insightful, as she was certain that the Vicario brothers were not as eager to carry out the sentence as to find someone who would do them the favor of stopping them. Knowing this, she sends many townspeople to warn Santiago Nassar, asking all the people she could to warn him when they saw him, even sending the beggar woman to Victoria Guzman and Father Amador as well. Clotilde does everything in her power to help Santiago without going after the twins herself. Nahir Miguel, Flora Miguel's father, is the character who first tells Santiago of the news. When he seems confused after Flora Miguel briefly mentions the twins' plans, he asks him outright if he knew that the Vicario brothers were looking for him to kill him. Though he is barely mentioned in the novella, Nahir Miguel is arguably one of the most important characters in the story for this reason. The Confused. Unfortunately, the characters I would have otherwise thought of to be willing to aid Santiago were more confused with either the lack of detail or a surplus of it. The group of characters I'm about to mention have the most ironic and coincidental circumstances in the novella. Cristo Bedoya is Santiago Nassar's closest known friend. Before he meets with him, Cristo, for reasons unknown even to himself, spends 2 hours at his grandparents' house instead of his parents, who had been waiting for him since dawn to warn him. He could have saved countless hours of confusion if he had gone to his parents' house instead. When he searches for Santiago in his home, he runs into Plácido Linero. He chooses not to inform her of her son's approaching doom because he was aware that he was in a suspicious situation, but he didn't have the courage to reveal the truth. Even though he brought Santiago's gun, he couldn't have shot at the twins himself because he ironically does not know how to shoot, and either way would not have helped because Santiago always leaves the revolver unloaded. Later, as he realizes that he's lost his friend in the streets, Cristo panics. He tried to run but was hindered by the revolver, which was stuck clumsily in his belt. In addition to being useless, the gun actually gets in the way. Ironic, as guns are made normally to keep people out of the way. Plácido Linero, Santiago's mother, excels at interpreting dreams. However, in the beginning of the book, she misinterprets her son's dream as being one of good luck. After speaking with her, the narrator mentions that she never forgave herself for having mixed up the magnificent augury of trees with the unlucky one of birds. Later, during the chase as the Vicario twins try to kill her son, she locks one of the doors to the house because Divina Flor had sworn to her that she'd seen her son come in, and locks the other door because she only sees the Vicario brothers from her angle inside the house, but not her son running towards her from a different angle. I thought they wanted to get in to kill Santiago inside the house, she reasons after her son is gone. The fact that she manages to lock both doors, inevitably trapping her beloved son outside to be brutally stabbed to death, displays irony in one of the most painful events of the novella. Caught in the crossfire, Santiago Nassar either didn't know about Angelo Vicario's accusation or knew but put it out of mind. Whether or not he truly does not know why he is being chased is for the audience to decide. The narrator believes that Santiago really was innocent. His reaction to finding out the Vicario twins' plans was not one of panic, as has so often been said, but rather the bewilderment of innocence. When Nahir Miguel asks if he knows of his fate, he exclaims, "I don't understand a goddamn thing." He even assures Sarah Noriega as he passes by with Cristo Bedoya that he was only pale because of his hangover from the previous night. Santiago also does something strange after he is stabbed multiple times by the twins. He walked more than 100 yards, completely around the house, and went in through the kitchen door. He takes the time to avoid the crowds on the streets, even when he's dying. Santiago seems strangely calm and happy for a dead man walking, literally, which shocks many of his relatives that see him walk by. If he really is an innocent man, then it is tragic that he's dying, but if he is guilty, then death really was fated for him after all. The overarching irony shines through in the form of the slip of paper on the kitchen floor that contains all the details of Santiago's murder. No one thought to pick up the paper until Santiago was dead, even though the novella mentions that Plácido Linero clearly saw it. Also, there are only 2 characters that I find strangely can't assign to a category, and they're the Vicario twins themselves. They seemingly do everything they can to stop themselves from murdering Santiago Nassar, from telling everyone they meet about their plans to almost having to drag themselves to do the deed, which doesn't place them in a category at all. Clotilde Armenta mentions multiple times to the narrator that they seemed reluctant to kill. Pablo Vicario has to convince his brother of their final resolve after Pedro Vicario seemingly tries to stall, even though Pedro had been the one who made the decision to kill Santiago Nassar in the first place. In the end, Pablo put the knife in Pedro's hand and dragged him off almost by force in search of their sister's lost honor. This choice of words strikes me as odd. After all, it was their idea to murder, but they would have undoubtedly decided against it if someone had tried to stop them. By the time they reached Santiago Nassar, it was too late to turn back. There's also the ironic fact that no one could tell Santiago Nassar for the longest time. Everyone who cared about him seems to either not be able to help him in time or act in ways that accidentally lead to his death. With every character's actions, the irony builds and builds, eventually spelling out Santiago's fated death in large, bold letters.